Compared to 2019, 2020 saw a reduction in crime rate in Barrie. The total number of property crimes went down. Violent crimes also saw a decline, and other types of crimes went down as well. But one thing that went up was the police budget. Despite this, during the presentation to the council, Deputy Chief Rich Johnston repeatedly said limited and finite resources. In the midst of decreasing crime and increasing budget, Barrie Police Department gave a presentation about its new approach to policing based on the severity of crimes. It will focus on community safety, well-being, and harm-based policing. Another Deputy Chief of Police, R. Wiley Allen, talked about community engagement and alternative solution for low-level crimes. Deputy Chief Rich Johnston stressed the need to treat crimes according to their severity. He also said minor theft and violent assaults need different approaches and resources and hence should be treated differently. He used crime maps based on the number of crimes and severity of them to convince the council. His map generated enthusiasm from various members of the council, including Mayor Lehman. Mayor Lehman has been asking for data since 2011. However, Chief Harris pointed out that numbers were missing from the maps and there were no explanations about the color used in the maps. Councillor Natalie Harris, who is going to run for mayor, asked about the plans to decriminalize drugs. She said it will allow officers to focus on violent crimes. Deputy Chief Allen said it was too early to make any commitment about that. Councillor Anne-Marie Kungl asked how residents can register security cameras with the police. The security cameras give police valuable information to solve the crimes. But there are also privacy and racial profiling concerns with those cameras. Last year, an article by the Washington Post listed benefits, privacy concern, and fatal risk of police having access to the footage. You can use the timestamps in the description to navigate through the video.
And this is by the Barrie Police Service concerning the community safety, well-being, and harm-focused policing. So our police chief, Kimberly Greenwood, is with us tonight to introduce the presentation. Chief Greenwood, welcome to City Council, as always.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman, Deputy Ward, and members of council and those joining us remotely. Tonight, Deputy Chief Wiley Allen and Deputy Chief Rich Johnston will share information on the Barrie Police Service well-being and safety initiatives and our focus on evidence-based policing. We have a presentation that we're just putting up for council this evening. I'll pass it on to Deputy Allen.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening. Community safety and well-being plans are about finding new ways for municipal and community partners to work together to achieve shared goals that reflect community priorities. Community safety and well-being plans build off existing efforts and encourage new collaborations as a way to achieve more, given the limits of available resources. Now that the plan has received council's endorsement, plan partners are beginning to work to implement identified actions with the support of the city. The province has legislated municipalities to develop and adopt community safety and well-being plans. The Barrie Police Service is one of 15 partners that help the city to develop the plan and has responsibilities to help implement specific action items. Within the Barrie Police Service, we have a number of resources that work fully or partially on implementing action items under the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan or by contributing generally to improving community safety and well-being. To assist in implementing the action items assigned to the Barrie Police Service, we have created the position of Community Safety and Wellbeing Officer. Many of you will be familiar with Constable Kira Brooks.
Hello, I'm Constable Kira Brooks with the Barrie Police Service. I'm our Community Safety and Wellbeing Officer. As a dedicated Community Safety and Wellbeing Officer, I'm focused on community engagement and advocating for alternative solutions for at-risk community members who are involved in low-level crimes. I'm excited that we have a brand new Community Safety and Wellbeing team that is committed to our community.
Constable Brooks is responsible for developing partnerships with community organizations, developing community engagement opportunities, and to work with downtown business owners to identify and address concerns. All of this is with the goal of improving general community safety and well-being. Please know that Constable Brooks is not alone. She works alongside one of our community safety and well-being teams, focusing on community engagement and social disorder. We'd like to share some successes of our community safety and well-being unit. Constable Kara Brooks was involved in the Bright Spot program, which was launched after a community member expressed concerns about safety in the downtown area. Constable Brooks completed a safety audit and offered suggestions. As a result, a community partnership developed the Bright Spot campaign, as well as an initiative to light up downtown alleys. Further, our community safety and well-being team that focuses on social disorder was able to make a number of significant arrests in relation to hundreds of graffiti tags throughout the city of Barrie. 5 individuals were identified and held to account, ultimately facing more than 100 charges in total. This team has also been able to successfully collaborate and partner on other projects within the community. Next, Deputy Johnston will now speak for our other community safety and well-being team, which focus on high harm areas and how they are using evidence-based policing principles to more effectively deploy frontline resources to reduce harm.
Thank you, Deputy Allen. The Barrie Police Service is operationalizing the Canadian Crime Severity Index to use our finite resources in a more effective and efficient way. We are pivoting. We're looking at the city through a different lens, one that takes into account the harm that crime causes. What do I mean by this? All crimes are not equal. A minor theft and a violent assault share one thing. They're both counted as crimes. But counting them as equal because they are both crimes misses the very real impact that they have on the victim and the broader community. Historically, police services have reported primarily on crime counts. With harm-focused policing, we are treating responses to crime with greater attention to the harm it causes the victim and the broader community. While both the theft and the violent assault have a victim, and we are sensitive to what that may mean for the victim especially, the injury and fear that are created because of the violent physical assault is far greater than that of a minor theft. Our approach, while seeking to reduce total crime volume, is focusing on high harm. Research strongly supports this approach. The effectiveness of a police service in achieving its purpose as a public safety organization directly impacts the trust the community has in their police. This is a legitimacy building approach. Research also supports the methodology we're using. We know crime concentrates. It is most certainly not spread evenly over a geographic area. On this map, crime is mapped within the city of Barrie by volume. Note the different areas. Some have single tiles, others have towers or stacks. Think of these towers as hotspots. These reflect areas of concentration of numbers of individual crimes. On this map is crime mapped by harm. The higher the stack, the greater the harm of the individual crimes. The different colors you are seeing are categories of crimes. This allows the police to better measure our impact. Some represent purely proactive enforced crime, others, privately detected commercial crime. The dark blue is victim-based harm. We are able to focus, to target specifically on those crimes and locations where the victim experienced the greatest harm. Note that between the two maps, there are a number of different areas of concentration. While evidence-based research explains that crime by volume concentrates, we also know that crime by harm is even more concentrated. Our CSWB teams are now deployed to proactively police in areas that are considered high harm hotspots. We are targeting high harm locations, testing evidence-based crime reduction strategies, and tracking the results to be better able to measure the impact we are having. To alleviate any fears or concerns, frontline officers continue to respond to traditional calls for service, no matter the location, and if needed, CSWB teams will also respond. We recognize that this approach requires a balance. We aim to reduce crime harm while reducing crime volume. We are also looking to address social disorder that impacts our community. All this while recognizing that you, our community that we serve, want to see more of us. This is what operationalizing research looks like. I will let Sergeant Randy Fitzgerald tell you about what he does best.
Sergeant Fitzgerald. I am the Sergeant in the Community Safety and Wellbeing Unit. One of the dashboards I have is the Crime Harm Index based on areas. So essentially what that is areas of the city that are experiencing the most harm, either by high crime offenses or high harm crime offenses happening there, or multiple crimes, so volume. I look at the information and I deploy the officers to those areas at specific times in hopes to deter future crimes from happening.
Constable Hudson Cormier is a member of our Community Safety and Wellbeing team and explains how being deployed to a high harm hotspot can ensure officers are in the right place at the right time to improve safety in our city.
My name is Hudson Cormier. I've been with the Barrie Police Service as a constable for almost 4 years now. I'm currently a part of the Community Safety and Wellbeing team. 100% more proactive. We definitely get to see the areas of the town that we need to attend to because they're, showing that they're a hot spot. We're targeting certain times in certain areas, and we're making more of an impact for sure.
We've taken our data and are using it far more effectively. The CSWB team's approach is strategic, targeted, and researched. We want to make the best use of our limited resources. We're focusing our CSWB teams where they can have the most impact in areas of high harm and high crime volume. We are also addressing social disorder. We are tracking harm levels to evaluate our effectiveness. This is about reducing the harm of crime and the number of crimes committed, while also recognizing the impact of social disorder. We are effectively deploying our resources where they are needed most. As always, you can reference our strategic plan or our annual reports online for more information about our initiatives and results, including from our annual community safety survey. Both Deputy Allen and I thank you for your time, as well as the Chief, and invite any questions you may have.
Okay, Deputies Allen and Johnston, Chief Greenwood, thank you very much for the presentation and the graphics, which frankly show our city quite differently when you look at it through a little bit of a different lens. Thank you very much for this. I'm sure there are some questions. I already saw a few placards. I think Councillor Natalie Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Thank you very much for the presentation. At one point, you spoke of seeing you more, which is obviously something we definitely hear as ward councillors. And we reach out to you and kind of share what our concerns are within each ward. But this is kind of a broad question, and I was hoping if you can't answer it here, I can talk to you offline. But are there any discussions within the Barrie Police Service about following in the footsteps of the Toronto Board of Health with decriminalization of drugs, which would then allow our officers to focus more on those higher violent crimes?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Harris. The Barrie Police Service has to follow the laws as they are written, and we are sworn to follow the law that there is. That's there. When it comes to decriminalization of drugs, there are positions put out by a number of social agencies, community, different levels of government, as well as the CACP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. So while we wait further direction, those things will happen, and perhaps there's an opportunity for discussion on this further down the road, but the time is too early to make any commitment of that sort.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely wasn't looking for commitment in any way. Yeah, I really welcome having a conversation with you at your convenience as well. And yeah, it's definitely a topic that is important. And it just really, Sean, I didn't even think about asking this question, to be honest, until you said seeing more of you. And that really is evidence-based policing, like you are speaking of as well, that if we can decriminalize drugs, then we can see our officers who are trained on so many other levels to take care of our city in other ways. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Kungl.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Chief Greenwood and the rest of the team. Thank you for the presentation. I do have about 3 questions. And I want to start off by saying thank you for highlighting the role in the task force. We're still trying to get that messaging out to the public because we've seen Constable Kira Brooks in Ward 3, for example, and she's done some direct engagement to help identify areas of concern that residents have raised. And I know there's a lot of new information that has come about that she was able to share with residents on the importance of sharing, calling the non-emergency line and also using the new online reporting tool. I didn't know if you could share a little bit more about how important it is for residents to be engaging with you in some way to help identify times of day, days of the week, where they're seeing something happen that allows you to target some of the officers with that task force. So I was hoping you could speak to what I'm seeing as some new online reporting resources.
Councillor Kungl, thank you for your question. Yes, Constable Brooks is doing a great job out there with the community engagement, working with her team to get information from the community so we can better serve the members of the community. There are a number of ways for the community to engage. One thing that we would love to see is more engagement with the community safety survey that Deputy Johnston spoke about in his presentation. And if we had elevated numbers in that, it certainly gives us a robust picture of what people are feeling out there. And we're always trying to pass that message off to engage in that survey and any other means. To your point of online reporting, if we can drive some of the low harm crimes towards online reporting, it's better for the community, allows us to serve. I can assure council and the community that even the online reporting gets the attention it's deserving of for investigations. And we have officers that go through that and follow up with the community as well. So as Deputy Johnston said, our resources are finite and we need to do a better job with what we have. The online reporting is a great tool for us to do that, as well as the other online services that we offer.
Thank you. In follow-up, if I may. So in addition to the online reporting tool, I know some of our residents in my ward have security cameras, but weren't aware that they could actually register them with Barrie Police. And sometimes I'm actually seeing residents sharing recordings of whether it's, someone looking for change in a car that's been left unlocked, or, individuals that might be kind of in the neighborhood. That's being shared on community platforms and on social media, but maybe not being directly connected to police. Can you share any information about how those cameras are registered and how that information is used, or if that is beneficial around being able to respond in time?
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Kungl. Yes. So as Deputy Allen's spoken about those online tools on our website, you can register your camera. Again, it doesn't give us access. It just lets us know it's there. And we would then reach out to you if there's crimes reported in the area. I just want to take you back for a second to your previous question, which was excellent, but please understand, as we are a finite resource, everything we spoke of today was about, or I spoke of, was about reported crime. I'm under no illusion that we capture all crime. In fact, we call it the iceberg effect. So much crime happens that we're unaware of. And to your point, if citizens are finding low harm or low level crimes occurring, please report them online. It gives us a better picture of date, time, location. We have those finite resources and we can target them better if we know what's going on. And so it's not us, police and the community, it's the police that is the community, and we're working together.
Thank you. And if I may, you might have just provided a lovely segue into my final question. I am seeing some of the signage popping up around Neighborhood Watch. I mean, I remember as a kid having the signs in the windows, as a safe place to go. So are you seeing residents actually getting more engaged around Neighborhood Watch? I'm also hearing that those are programs that actually support some seniors initiatives around if you identify an individual who may be wandering in the community. So I was wondering if there is a new push or opportunity when we talk about partners with police in community and community safety, Is that something that we could be promoting more or taking more advantage of with residents? And how does that fit with some of the new initiatives you've been doing? I believe it's Citizens on Patrol. So I know I'm getting lots of questions around knowing there was a great application process, you had some response. Are we seeing those individuals now in our communities and neighborhoods, and how do they interact with residents?
Thank you, Councillor Kungl, for that question. Yeah, that's a lot of information. I'll try to capture and touch on it all. I want to start at the end where you talked about our volunteers, our COPS program, and even our auxiliary program. Our volunteers are our best ambassadors within the community to get the word out there, offer perspective, and pass the word around on how much value the community brings to the work that we do, as Deputy Johnston just spoke about, and letting us know what the real picture is out there. Everybody's seen our auxiliary officers. They're dressed generally in a uniform similar to ours, and they provide a number of functions to assist with us through the different operations that we would have in the city. Our COPS volunteers that you speak of, a little bit of a different group. We have a robust group. We just actually trained a number of new volunteers in the past, just before this last COVID lockdown. And they can be seen, last publicly seen, walking the grounds on the tornado site, providing that just sense of security, sense of well-being, sense of confidence that someone's down there looking after the site. They would direct any residents to any professionals that are down at the area dealing with things, so people are informed properly. They are also being considered to be used with some traffic safety initiatives that we are working, and stay tuned for more on that in the near future. But we're always looking for ways to increase the robustness of the volunteers that serve the Barrie Police. As far as programs out in the community, Neighborhood Watch, I also touched on Bright Spot, which is a volunteer program similar to Neighborhood Watch in the downtown community. We have good plans. I have to admit, I would have to follow up with you on the Neighborhood Watch part, and please feel free to reach out to me at any time. I know the Bright Spot campaign with a certain amount of training allows the store owners to volunteer for that program. And I think right now we have a list of 15 or 20 more businesses downtown that want to participate in that. So there's a not a need, but there's also a desire to contribute to these programs to ensure their success.
Great, thank you. I have no further questions, and do want to thank you for your presentation and your service.
Our pleasure.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kungl. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Jim Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Chief Greenwood, and the rest of the team for the presentation. I guess for me, it's really interesting. I guess it provides more questions than answers, to be honest. I'm just curious, as you look at the harm-focused policing and the examples you give, minor theft is low-harm crime, high harm crime is violent assault. Of those two types of crime, which is an easier one to deter based on having police officers actively patrolling? Because it feels like some of the violent crime might be harder to persuade than the smaller stuff, like people breaking into cars and homes and those kind of things.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. So the challenge for us will be, we are leveraging research, and the issue we have is debunked for a number of years and a number of decades is random patrol as an effective crime prevention tool. And it is a challenge for a lot of us because it's a comfort. And the reality is we can be more effective if we're far more targeted. We speak about low harm crime, and it's not simply the occurrence of the crime, it's the effect on the individual victim and the broader community. And so the targeting of that higher harm crime is for a more victim-focused approach. And appreciating your point, certainly there are a number of types of high harm crime that happen behind closed doors. We're aware of that, and that is the challenge going forward. But how we target that and how we react to that, there are some crime reduction strategies we can attempt. Again, and I'll give you an example in an apartment complex. And it's not just the police. If we're aware of them, if we're made aware of them, if it's reported, we can then target that location. And it's not simply a police resource. Maybe we're bringing partners with us. And I'm talking about our community partners in terms of wellness, whether it's the Women and Children's Shelter, there's outreach communities. We heard from EFRI earlier. This is not a police-only approach. This is where we find out where community well-being is needed most in that high harm area. And the police are there to disrupt the crime triangle. And that's the victim, an individual to commit the crime, and the lack of a capable guardian, that being the police or a citizen on patrol or an auxiliary or a landlord or capable guardian, anyone in that property. And we're trying to disrupt that. And so it's not a simple solution because it's a complex problem.
Yeah, thank you. And with that noted, how will you know this change, there's an improvement? Like, what are the metrics that will be used to measure the improvement based on the changes?
And that's an excellent question. So historically, we've just looked at volume, and crime goes up, crime goes down. So you may have a number of thefts drop, someone installs a new loss prevention program and crime goes down in terms of numbers. But when we talk about high harm, we talk about the values or the weights associated to those from the crime severity index. And so we can actually measure what crimes take place or reported to police in a certain location, and if we're seeing those values drop. And so in not a perfect world, but in a world where we're more effective, we see harm values drop year over year, and eventually decline. We recognize it's going to occur at some level, but we minimize that, and we minimize its impact on our victims. And so the idea being, we set a standard, we see where we're at, and then when we measure our effectiveness by how much we're reducing that, the weight of the crime or the crime harm.
Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna have to stop myself soon. I get lots of questions, but I was thinking, we've got these wonderful blocks, but we have no numbers on these blocks. I'm not even sure what an orange block is versus a pink block and a blue block on the chart. So, the blocks are interesting, but I don't know if that big tall tower is a 5 or is it a 205. So it's really hard. Anyway, so I think Mayor Lehman's going to jump in. I don't know.
No, I'm going to jump in because I was going to ask about the same thing, Jim. And
Okay.
I'll actually ask Deputy Johnston if it's possible to put that side by side of the two maps up because it is such an enlightening graphic all on one slide. If we can share the screen again with the police service and get that slide up with the colored blocks, and maybe Deputy Johnston, you could just walk us through that, those two images again.
Certainly. And so I hope you appreciate.
Perfect.
Yes, that we're purposely at a high level here, because the closer you zoom in, the smaller those tiles become in terms of specific locations and addresses. So appreciating what that means, I will draw your attention to the all blue mapping, and that's by volume. So a single tile is a single crime on the all blue map. The higher the stack, the number of crimes have occurred there. And so the higher the tower, the number of crimes, not what type of crime. On your right with the colorful map, each of the colors represents a different type of crime. So I spoke to the dark blue. That is crimes against person. As you get in closer, the mapping actually changes where the higher towers, those are by the weight of the crime. So there may be orange in there, yellow, purple. So again, purple being, it's classified as other, so human trafficking, extortion. There's some, not to get into too specific, but there are certain crime types that are weighted. And so you'll see that in terms of a finite resource, we're looking at areas where they converge and they overlap. So if you want the most effectiveness for your finite resources, the idea being when you lay one over the other and you find those locations which are in sync, and then you place resources at specific times doing specific things, it can reduce crime and reduce crime harm. And appreciating that is very separate than social disorder and a complexity all to itself.
So I'll ask maybe a question of interpretation, and maybe it's yours too, Jim. So if we're looking at this map on the right, the height of the tower in total, is that the total harm to the community that we're seeing at that particular location? Okay, so if we, on the left, you could have equivalent height towers where you've got 100 thefts and you've got 100 assaults, even though the harm to the community is so much greater from 100 assaults. Well, it's probably a poor example, but let's go severe. You know, not that we have those locations, but 10 homicides versus 10 thefts. The towers on the left would be the same size. On the right, the homicide tower would be so much higher, and the 10 thefts would be that much lower. And, you know, when you look at the community that way, you say, are we sending our resources to the places where there's the greatest impact on the community from crime, not just the highest raw count? Have I got that about right?
You do, Mayor. And to be quite honest, if we zoomed far closer in here, we zoomed right in, you would see a majority of the city of Barrie does not suffer crime at all. And I put that out there in terms of incredibly low to nil. And so it is not evenly spread. And so we do try to police that even spread. And there are some challenges with that. I would go back to Councillor Harris's question about, you know, the idea for an increased visibility. We know we need to be seen more, and there are strategies for that. But we also know that we want to make sure that we're in those, on the towers on the right, in those areas, we want to see those towers drop. And that is a focus, because that affects that is for each, the height of those towers is the harm to our victims, and it has a reverberating effect across our community. And that is an important factor we need to take into account, and we need to target that far more effectively.
Councillor Harris, you had the floor.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm still, I mean, I appreciate the answers. I think it's still, the information is there, but it's left with lots of question marks. There's no numbers attached, no severity based on crime. What are the colors? So I appreciate the effort to use a evidence-based model. I think that's great. This may be a question as you gather evidence on the effectiveness of policing and policing based on severity index and data to improve our community. How will that inform police volumes? As per se, I know one of the things we talk about is, there's no consistency as for how many police you have to have per capita, per 100,000 people, whatever. Is some of that evidence moving towards being able to make better quality decisions about how many police in a community should have per capita?
So Councillor Harris, fair question. I'm not going to project that down the road. Certainly from my seat here, I'm going to suggest that given the finite resources that we have now, how do we more effectively use those? And certainly this is a reflection of a system used in the United Kingdom as a result of some austerity measures that occurred there. So what we're looking at doing is just being far more effective with the finite resources we have currently.
It seems like finite is the operative word for the night. I will say one quick question. You're talking about the UK. Are you moving towards using less force with your model? So for example, with its social disorder, will police officers be more like the bobbies that you reference? And from your UK education, would you be seeing that type of policing more commonly used in Ontario or Barrie?
So Councillor Harris, to answer your question, I would, having been back and forth a number of times, I'm going to suggest that, and not bragging, but the policing in Ontario is some of the best in the world. And it's not about the tools on your belt, it's about the tools in your head. And our officers, the vast majority across this province are excellent at de-escalation, and that's actually where it counts. To ignore the fact that we're bordered south of us to the most heavily armed nation in the world is not something I'm going to venture toward. My suggestion in terms of policing, our training is looking at policing our population and with our population with a procedural justice approach. And that is, there's a complexity to that, but it's just dealing with it, people as we have, in terms of treating them as human beings and individuals that we come across in terms of our duties. So I'm not suggesting that we're markedly moving away from policing as we do today, because the training in Ontario is some of the best in the world.
I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I can see where obviously this data will be very beneficial, especially when you look at it from a sector policing model when it comes to deploying your resources. But my question is actually more from a proactive standpoint. And I know recently I saw in the news where The Barrie Police have announced a new program, the Inside Out program for youth based out of the Holly Community Center that begins on February the 7th. I was just wondering if anybody is in a position to be able to speak a little bit further about that program, because I do believe it does tie into community safety and well-being, but more from a proactive standpoint.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Indeed, it is. It's very proactive. And in terms of a public safety service, we recognize that it's simply not, our role is not law enforcement. It can't be, given the complexity of our society today. So when we look at something like the Inside Out program, that is actually built on evidence-based principles. Its involvement in police is so far as just the simple delivery. The overt presence of police is minimal at best. It's based on looking at adverse childhood experiences and the strong research supporting looking at individuals who've experienced in that and giving them coping strategies and talking about the number one quality that has the potential to divert an individual who's experienced those or a number of them, and equipping them with resilience and a strategy to potentially later on in life make different choices given the adverse childhood experiences that they've had. And so it is very proactive. It is completely evidence-based in terms of its foundation and how it's being delivered.
Great, thank you. And just one follow-up to that, because I know some might look at this presentation as very enforcement-based, but I don't necessarily look at this as just enforcement-based. It's obviously to do with deploying your resources as effectively as you can. But I know on one slide there, I guess it was slide 8, where you spoke about low harm crime versus high harm crime, and looking at, let's say, a minor theft in regards to a violent assault. Obviously, when those incidents are being investigated by the police, they may be treated differently. They may, especially the minor theft, could be eligible for a diversion program. Would you be able to speak to that, just to give residents a little bit of an understanding about the fact that these different crimes are actually dealt with by the police and the justice system quite differently?
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Yes, and as a society, we look at that, and as the police, we are part of the pre-charge diversion, and we're currently using that program, as is the Crown's office. The reality is, when it's a low harm offense, we recognize that at the end of the day, what best serves the community, the individual, the victim, and it's taking that all into account. But I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to the fact that the police, when they're investigating every single crime, they're attuned to the victim. And simply because I said low harm crime, I don't want people to misunderstand that means the victim, their experience of the crime is low harm. Some people like diamonds, they're extrinsically worth a lot of money. My mom likes garden gnomes. If you broke my mom's garden gnome, I'm going to suggest to you that means a lot more to her than a piece of compressed coal that's turned into a shiny rock. It's the experience of that crime. We're sensitive to that, and so we recognize that. But having said that, when on a broader and a societal level, certainly extreme violence is addressed by the police differently than relatively minor offenses.
Great, thank you. And I do thank you all for your great presentation. I look forward to seeing what the results look like down the road.
Councillor Harvey, other questions for our deputy chiefs? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Question to any of the Barrie Police representatives. So I want to start with, it leads to the question, but huge kudos to Officer Brooks, not just herself specifically, but also the existence of her position. What she's been able to do on social media, what she's been able to do on the streets. We're restoring that sense of when you're in danger, you run to the cops because you trust them, not you run away from the cops when they enter a space or a room. So it is baby steps, but that is exactly the culture shift or redirection we need to do. As a result of that, are there any plans to have more of that visibility? I know there's been comments in the past that says more cops in the area don't necessarily make it more safe. If anything, it might create a perception that, wow, there's a lot of cops always in this area. Why? Is there some dangers? But what I'm hearing from residents who visit more pedestrian areas, such as the BIA perimeter, and what I'm hearing from actual BIA members themselves is that visibility helps. That officer checking in and getting coffee and saying, hey, how is the owner still on vacation? How's the new donut going? And having that relationship. What I'm hearing is a little bit different from the comments of we don't maybe want them as visible. So I'm wondering how we're resolving those two viewpoints. How the Barrie Police is resolving those two.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Morales. First of all, thank you for the compliments on the work of our community safety officer, Kira Brooks. She is doing a fantastic job, tailor-made, I think, for the position that we've created, and it's working really well to harmonize the community and the Barrie Police. As it relates to community relationships in the downtown and elsewhere, as well as public visibility in these areas. Kira and the community engagement team, which is part of the community safety wellbeing team, are working very hard to address the concerns of the entire city. The downtown certainly is one of them, and efforts are being made, and we are aware of meetings with the BIA to address some of those concerns, and we will continue to address those concerns as we are able. Definitely, we want to have those relationships with not everybody just downtown, but elsewhere in the community. We have a number of initiatives that might be wanted downtown, but are also wanted in our green spaces, are also wanted behind the schools. And not to use the term Councillor Harris spoke to, the finite resources, but we just can't be everywhere at the same time. So we really depend on those relationships you spoke of so that we can prioritize where our teams go and what kind of work they can do. And it really, really counts. The community engagement side of it really, really counts on the collaboration and the partnerships and the relationships that we build within the community, downtown or elsewhere, to have maximum effect. So we are there at the right time, knowing what's outside of the norm, and deploying not just our own persons, but other collaborative resources and social and community networks within the community to address any of these problems.
Still on mute, Sergio. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for that response. And to confirm what you said, the BI board passed a resolution to send a letter to the chief. The chief's office has responded to me, I believe, last week, and we're in the midst of scheduling that. So I'll look forward to that meeting. My final question is this. So an elephant in the room up here in the northeast end of Barrie is a specific student off-campus student housing building has been reported by the media. And I'm sure if we look at those metrics, I actually noticed that really tall tower in the back corner of the northeast end. And so what can Barrie Police do when they start to see the concentration of crime, all types of crime, the concentration of assaults in specific areas, and there's a pattern to it? There becomes like, oh, that's going to be that area, because I think anybody living in anywhere in Barrie, not just Northeast Enders, but start becoming concerned when an area starts becoming known as the area or the complex or the intersection, whatever you want to call it, because these things don't happen overnight. It's a culture thing. It emerges. So now that it's been, I really want to thank the media for that story that was done a couple of weeks ago, I believe, by Barrie Today. So what can Barrie Police do to get behind it, get in front of it and prevent that from becoming a concentration of that area? And maybe there's homework for council. Maybe what can council do? But I think everybody wants to make sure that concentrations don't happen and we don't have any no-go areas, especially in specific buildings where parents, whether they're from Barrie or not, are entrusting their 17, 18-year-old sons and daughters to be attending for post-secondary.
Thank you, Councillor Morales. This is going to be a bit of a two-pronged answer. I'm going to just start and talk about some of the engagement part, and I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Johnston, who will talk about the evidence and the layers of crime that you spoke to. So this is a perfect example for our community engagement team to be part of that community. It wouldn't just be the tiles that you spoke about in the background that you saw on the picture, but how does this affect not just the population within the towers, or in the buildings or the area, but the entire community. So that's an opportunity for our community engagement team to get out there, find out what's happening, and work with the community and any other agencies to deter, educate, prevent anything that would compound the problems that would lead to a more hard enforcement approach that Deputy Johnston's going to speak to as it relates to the evidence and the reports that we're receiving.
So Councillor Morales, thank you. And just to clear up something there. So when we speak about those towers, that is the reported crime. The intent of a public safety is to make ourselves more present and more visible there. And the idea being, it's not strictly law enforcement. The idea being is, we win the day as a community if we're there more often and those towers shrink. And I mean shrink drastically, both in volume and harm. And so the modeling that you see is the starting point. Please understand that the Barrie Police, our intent is not to, come in charging, and it's about that hard line approach. The idea is to reduce crime, and to our mere presence may actually inhibit its occurrence in the first place. And the research supports that. If you see visible presence in the police in areas, the likelihood of that crime occurring, some types of crime, is reduced. And that is our purpose. So when we're sending it, as Deputy Allen said, when we're sending in our the community safety and wellbeing team, it's targeted for a particular purpose. It's not simply to charge, it's to be present. It's to engage people. We know the #1 crime reduction strategy on the globe is collective efficacy. It's a community that's engaged with their surrounding neighbors, with their businesses. They're talking to each other. That is the #1. That's the best police service in the world. Everyone in the community is part of it. That is where we'd love to be. But our attempt is to get in there and engage with people and see the towers reduced. I don't want to say drop, reduced.
Yeah. So let me just do a follow up to that. Okay, great. So that's the goal. I think we're all understanding that that's the goal. That's everybody's desire. What happens in the scenario where the property management company, the community, is not receptive to your strategies, isn't an active participant, right? Whenever you hear these scenarios, whether it's a private sector property management company, maybe sometimes it's they say we're willing to work with the local law. You always hear that. Everybody's on the table. What happens when you get someone who either they're unaware? No, they're not unaware. What happens if you get someone who's just unwilling to have those conversations, and therefore it doesn't make your job as easy as to like an officer's going to go there twice a week, do the rounds, run into people, and have a presence at these hours? What if they're not as receptive? Not saying that's a scenario here, but it could become the scenario here. Again, these things don't happen overnight. This is an area doesn't become one of those areas overnight. So at what point do you escalate your approach? And if you could approach it on a generic macro level, you don't have to be about a specific site, but I'm curious as to that, because that first point sounds great. And usually most people are willing to, as a community would love the help, right? If they know they're starting to become problematic. But I'm wondering what happens when that's not the case. What do you guys do? So
I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to suggest to you that when we have those areas of that resist that police behavior, there are a number of things, not just the police can do, but as a community. And so in terms of the criminological research, we talk about focused deterrence. And that's not just the police. That may be the city and property and standards. That may be Barrie Fire and Emergency Services in terms of looking at all the laws. That's the Crown Attorneys with respect to when the police do lay specific charges in there, depending upon the surrounding context, what happens with those charges. It's not a simple, it wouldn't just be a simple answer that I could give you. And on a macro level, Councillor, it is arguably you'd want to bring a more a team approach that requires a number of levels of government as well as community services.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else have questions? Councillor Kungl.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Chief Greenwood and the team. So this might be one you can't answer, but one I'm keen to see about where we can carry the conversation. So when we talk about the lens of women and safety, and in the media back in 2019, we saw that report talking about the best and worst places for women to live, and Barrie didn't do well. And across 6 key metrics, we fell short considerably around health and personal security. And there are some interesting metrics under personal security, be it sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and other pieces. Knowing that sometimes when we look at the metrics, and these are dated, I think, back to 2017, are there metrics that we can look at that are more updated, that can reflect how individuals are engaging in reporting, education about, encouraging women to seek support, understand what supports are there? Because sometimes when we look at data, it can be also skewed based on how we see whether or not women have reported or underreported, and what is the actual picture of impact. I'm not sure if Barrie Police is looking at that, and at some point in time, you know, is there a space and place to talk a bit about what we're seeing with more updated data on those metrics?
Thank you, Councillor Kungl. So as you said, it's less about the skewing of those statistics, but the challenge of them. And so we'll have a reported number of intimate partner violence events. What the public may see is year over year, maybe it's stable, maybe it drops, and it dropped at the beginning of COVID. And again, there was, well, that's a surprise. And what we said from the outset is that's reported crime. We're under no illusion that there are survivors behind locked doors, and they're facing life challenges we can't even imagine, and we're not being reported to because there's no out for them. And we understand that. We recognize that there are other measures that we can take into account when we're actually looking at those rates of intimate partner violence. It may not necessarily be the police being reported to. The Women and Children's Shelter receives, they get individuals get counseling there, and you have to recognize that perhaps over time, maybe there's a distrust in the police. Maybe there's just, there's just not that willingness to come forward. You may see in the future rates of intimate partner violence reporting to police climb. But, the cautionary note is that may not be a bad thing if the reason why it's being reported is because there's increased transparency in the policing, and there's a belief that we're going to be able to do something, and we're out there and we're actively doing things, and there's a relationship building aspect to that. So as you said, it depends on the context.
I guess in follow-up to that, is there, so we don't look at another report in another couple of years. I'm not sure the frequency of when this comes out using the same metrics, but is there a space where we can look at up-to-date data with a more perhaps review around all different places referrals or contacts are being made to give a picture of women's well-being in the city of Barrie? Is that something that would potentially sit with a Barrie Health Accord, or is that data being collected through partnerships, be it the shelters, the crisis centers, and Barrie Police, where we can actually look at getting information about, what are we seeing through COVID and then in the coming years?
Thank you, Councillor Kungl. So does it rest with the Barrie Police? No, and only that because we would have limited information. Does it sit with the Health Accord? Maybe a far better vehicle to drive that forward. And I won't speak on behalf of the chief, but I think as the Barrie Police Service, that may be a far better partnership. Reports to the hospital that we don't get, reports to the shelters and other community agencies that are there to support victims and survivors. Absolutely. Is it possible? Anything is possible. We would certainly participate insofar as getting a more robust picture of what's going on in our community, and then taking our finite resources and investing them where they need to be victim focused.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kungl. If no other questions, I just had a couple in closing. Were there any other questions from members of council? Okay. Deputies, could you just give us a bit of an update as to what we've seen in the last 2 years? Since the onset of COVID, almost everything has changed, lots of different ways. But what are the trends we're seeing in terms of crime harm and crime frequency in our city over the last 2 years?
Thank you, Mayor. So I can advise you that we've noticed a dip during COVID of both crime harm and crime volume. And as a general statement, we have now seen the increase, not beyond previous measures. And so the concept is regression to the mean. There is a level of crime within our community. It's not beyond that, but it's certainly not returning to normal, because we don't want that to be normal, but it's certainly returning to pre-COVID, both in terms of volume and harm. That is a broad statement of where we're at right now. Ideally, with the harm-focused approach, we'd like to see that reverse and see, there is volume there, but if we can reduce that harm and be a focus there and show that measurable improvement. But right now it is trending upwards to pre-COVID levels, not in any drastic sense. It is a very safe city.
Right, and I mean, one would expect a dip in certain types of crime just with, the shutdown of some degree of public activity, inevitably. But there's been a lot of concern, of course, as well. And I know you said at the outset, I've forgotten which one of you it was, that of course the challenge is that for some crimes, particularly intimate partner violence and others, the reporting level can be depressingly low. That's a project we all need to work on, but as a police service, we want to work on to encourage and provide channels for women in particular to feel safe coming forward. During COVID, there was a specific concern about a rise in domestic violence. And I guess one of the challenges in knowing the degree to which that has occurred in our community or nationwide is that reporting challenge. But I'm wondering if either of you can speak to what we do know over the last 2 years.
Mayor, thank you for the question. I can say, and I've reported to the board, over COVID, we've seen definite effect on all our crimes. Everything has been slower. We have seen, even in this last lockdown, I'll be reporting to the board in February, but our calls for service, even in the last transition ending today, I guess, our calls for service had dropped noticeably. I have to say, this is for a lot of obvious reasons that you already mentioned, in that our communities are closed. Restaurants are closed. People are staying home, and we don't have the same traffic on our roads. A big concern through COVID that has been reported not just in the media in Barrie, but through the province, is the effect it has on persons' mental health. And we have definitely seen a climb in mental health calls. And we have been very active in dealing with that with our COAST team. And we look to other means to address some of those things through community safety wellbeing initiatives, as well as some new human resource strategies that we are looking at employing in 2022. Domestic violence, highly reported in the news. And we're seeing lots of stories about that. Again, to Deputy Johnston's state, we only know what we know by what's being reported, and we do need to work with confidence and trusting the police, but also with all the partners in the community safety wellbeing plan and the action plan, action partners, in that everybody has a part of dealing with some of these things, helping the people through the different areas and projects that we have, whether it's the Health Accord, whether it's going to be the Justice Center, the community hub, one-stop shop. all those places are going to have an influence on what crimes are reported and how people can work through the system with a close partner, a trusted friend, if you will, in the community that can help get through that. But Deputy Johnston was correct. And we will see that our numbers go back to normal after COVID, but normal doesn't necessarily respond to everything that is going on in the community. And maybe, I spoke to an earlier question with Councillor Kungl about a community safety survey, but it's also to reiterate what Deputy Johnston said, if people don't report things, we don't know it. And there is, for many reasons, a lot of crimes that aren't reported. We welcome them, and the more we can deal with those victims of crime and set them up with our community partners and the justice centers and the justice course of justice itself, I think the better we'll be. But it is a very safe community. Our numbers returning to normal are not something that should raise concern for anybody. And again, if our reports of crime go up for the right reasons, then we should welcome that as well.
All right. Well, thank you both. You delivered a presentation, then I answered questions for almost an hour there. Appreciate both of your work and the fact that, I just wanted to say to members of council as well as a member of the Police Services Board, I remember my first ask for data like this in 2011. And I remember the attempt to create some Excel bar charts with the information that we had available at that time, just to look at how much time was being spent by officers on calls to do what Deputy Johnston is talking about tonight, which is to look at the actual harm to people that resulted from crime, but also the amount of time our own officers were having to spend. And issues like, being at the hospital for their entire shift as an officer because of an apprehension under the Mental Health Act for somebody who was in crisis, and then there not being the resources to help that person, and they're sort of sitting at RVH waiting to see a psychiatrist. Those kinds of problems are detected by the use of this information, that's an obvious one in the sense of the experience of our officers, and we certainly didn't need an Excel chart or maps to show that. But what this does show, I think, is a quite different picture than we've traditionally seen when you start to look at the actual impact on victims, which after all should, to my mind, be our priority. And that's not always an easy thing to measure. I think the crime severity index Deputy Johnston has developed by using a weighting that's based on the sentencing, and sentencing, under the criminal code is supposed to reflect the impact on victims of the crime loosely, but it is a challenge. And I guess the reason to say all of that is the effort that's been made to actually look at the patterns of crime in our community and better target resources are light years better than they were even a few years ago. So how we use that information now is a really great question. And it is a question I'm sure council will continue to be interested in, and we talk about it at the police board almost every month in one way or the other. But thanks for this. I also think in general, more presentations from the police service to city council are a good thing. And so we welcome you being here tonight as the senior command and the work that you're doing in our community.
There were calls to abolish the police after George Floyd was killed in the US. Councillor Keenan Alwyn also introduced a motion to do so in Barrie. Though his motion was defeated, this presentation showed the changing direction of policing in Barrie. Thank you for watching. See you next time.